She was young, beautiful, and one of the most feared figures in Nazi concentration camps. Dubbed the Hyena of Auschwitz, Irma Grace's reign of terror was defined by unspeakable cruelty, torture, and a chilling lack of remorse. But how did an ordinary girl become a monster? This documentary uncovers the dark truth behind one of history's most notorious war criminals. Watch now. The horrifying details will leave you speechless. Irma Grace was born on October 7, 1923, in Recken, a small town in northeastern Germany, in a working-class family. She had a troubled upbringing. Her father, a farmer, was emotionally distant and frequently abusive toward his family, while her mother, although loving, was often absent. Irma's early life was marked by a lack of emotional warmth, and her parents' unstable relationship likely had a lasting effect on her psychological development. After completing her schooling at the age of 15, Grace worked in various jobs, including as a domestic servant. In 1941, as the Nazi regime expanded its influence over Germany, Irma joined the Bund Deutscher Mädel, the female branch of the Hitler Youth, a youth organization aimed at indoctrinating young Germans into Nazi ideology. She later joined the SS, the paramilitary organization responsible for enforcing the policies of the Nazi regime, where she was assigned to work as a concentration camp guard. Irma Grace's early career in the SS led her to the infamous Auschwitz concentration camp in 1942. Initially, she served in an administrative role, but her determination and perceived efficiency quickly saw her promoted. At just 19 years old, Grace was appointed as a supervisor of female prisoners, a position that gave her significant authority over the people in the camp, most of whom were Jewish, Roma, political dissidents, and other groups targeted by the Nazis. Auschwitz was one of the largest and most brutal concentration camps in Nazi-occupied Europe, and Grace was assigned to the women's camp, where her actions would quickly make her infamous. As a member of the SS, she oversaw a variety of brutal activities, including forced labor, beatings, executions, and selections for the gas chambers. Irma Grace's reputation as the Hyena of Auschwitz stems from her unmatched cruelty and sadism during her time at the infamous concentration camp. Her brutal actions shocked and terrified the prisoners who were forced to live under her rule. As one of the youngest female supervisors at Auschwitz, Grace was a notorious figure in the camp, known for her ability to mete out punishment without remorse or hesitation. Her nickname was not given lightly. It was a reflection of her relentless and predatory behavior toward the prisoners. The role of an SS supervisor at Auschwitz required that guards maintain control over the camp's prisoners. But Irma Grace took this role far beyond simply enforcing order. She actively participated in and sometimes initiated acts of extreme cruelty. Her actions were not just those of a guard performing her duties, but those of a sadistic individual who derived pleasure from inflicting pain on others. One of the most infamous aspects of Grace's time at Auschwitz was her love for physical violence. Prisoners recalled that she was often seen carrying a whip, which she used to beat those she deemed disobedient, or even for reasons as trivial as a perceived lack of respect. She was known to take pleasure in her beatings, striking prisoners with such force that many were left bloodied and bruised. Her brutality was not limited to the prison population. Even the other guards often recoiled from her violence, fearful of crossing her or becoming the target of her wrath. In addition to physical abuse, Grace is believed to have been involved in forced labor and grueling work assignments that would often result in exhaustion, injury, and death for the prisoners. The grueling physical labor at Auschwitz, combined with her harsh treatment, contributed to a high mortality rate among the inmates. She was reportedly indifferent to the suffering caused by these conditions and viewed the prisoners as little more than tools to be exploited, disposed of without regard for their humanity. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of Irma Grace's reign of terror was her involvement in the selections at Auschwitz. During these selections, which took place regularly, prisoners were divided into two groups: those who were considered fit for forced labor and those who were deemed unfit. The unfit prisoners, often elderly, sick, or disabled, were sent to their deaths in the gas chambers. Greece was notorious for her role in this process, and many survivors of the camp testified to her cruelty during the selections. While other SS officers participated in these selections, Greece was particularly known for her cold and heartless demeanor. She is said to have sent entire families to their deaths with no second thought, sometimes even laughing as she condemned people to die. It is said that she would often take joy in the fear and desperation of the prisoners as they were herded toward the gas chambers. Some survivors claimed that Greece seemed to take pride in her role, demonstrating an almost prideful disregard for the lives of those she sent to their deaths. In one instance, prisoners remembered Greece selecting people for the gas chambers, only to later callously dismiss their cries for mercy. She reportedly laughed as people begged for their lives, showing no emotion beyond a cold satisfaction. This detached cruelty earned her the nickname Hyena, a reference to her behavior that was predatory and merciless. Irma Greece was not only feared because of her position of power. Her sadistic tendencies marked her as one of the most notorious figures in the concentration camp system. The Nazi concentration camps were sites of unimaginable suffering, but Grace's behavior was often described as beyond even the typical cruelty of other guards. She was a figure who actively participated in the creation of terror within Auschwitz, rather than simply enforcing the harsh rules imposed by the Nazis. What set her apart from other guards was not just her cruelty, but her apparent enjoyment of inflicting suffering. Some survivors reported that Greece would often give direct orders to execute prisoners, or that she would participate in torture sessions. This sadism was not limited to physical violence. She was also known for her psychological abuse. She frequently humiliated prisoners in public, making them the targets of verbal abuse, threats, and degrading remarks. This created a climate of fear that permeated the camp and had lasting psychological effects on the survivors. Greece's ability to maintain a composed and emotionless exterior while carrying out her brutal actions added to her menacing reputation. Prisoners feared the cold, calculating nature of her violence. Unlike many of the other SS officers, who would sometimes show brief moments of empathy, Greece showed no such vulnerability. Her presence alone was enough to instill fear. She was one of the few female guards who garnered such a fearsome reputation and became infamous for her complete lack of compassion. After the war, many former SS members were tried for their involvement in the Holocaust. Irma Grace was arrested by British forces and charged with war crimes and crimes against humanity for her actions at Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. She was put on trial at the Belsen trial, which was one of a series of trials held to bring Nazi war criminals to justice. At her trial, the evidence of her cruelty was overwhelming. Survivors from the concentration camps gave testimonies of her brutal treatment, while others described her direct involvement in the deaths of countless prisoners. Her defense at the trial was weak, and she showed little remorse for her actions. Greece claimed she was only following orders, a defense that was commonly used by Nazi war criminals. But the court did not find this excuse acceptable. Greece was convicted of crimes against humanity and war crimes. Despite being only 22 years old at the time of her trial, her actions as a guard in the Nazi camps were considered among the most horrific. She was sentenced to death by hanging, a sentence that was carried out on December 13, 1945, just a few weeks after her conviction. Her legacy is a tragic reminder of the horrific potential for human beings to become instruments of terror and suffering when they embrace ideologies of hate and dehumanization.